What's going on, guys? It's the Draft Nerd, and today I'm going to be checking out Chris Trapazzo's 2025 NFL mock draft. Now, these mock drafts this, early out are more so to get the players' names familiarized and things like that, because it's impossible to predict, which teams are going to be picking where and things like that. So this is more just to, get familiar with the players. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, coming in at number one, we got the Panthers picking number one overall yet again and taking a quarterback, Carson Beck. Now, I understand that, if the Panthers are picking at one here, it means Bryce Young probably failed again. And at that point, you want to take a quarterback. But, as far as it goes right now, there's no quarterback really worth the number one overall pick, especially to replace a guy like Bryce Young. So, that's a little tough for me. Carson Beck is probably right now the favorite for me to be the QB1 of this class. Again, it's super early, but I think he's the most translatable to the NFL, processing wise and things like that. Plus, I think he's, the most primed to take that next step that you would want, quarterbacks taken in their last year of college. But, overall, I don't really like replacing Bryce Young with Carson Beck with a number one overall pick. Moving on, we got the Titans taking James Pierce Jr., the defensive lineman out of Tennessee. I mean, again, I'm not going to harp too much on the, which teams are picking where, but the Titans, I don't know if the Titans are going to be picking this early. But yeah, Pierce is just a super productive, edge rusher from Tennessee. He's long, lanky, got the power, the speed. I think he's my favorite to be the number one overall pick as of right now. Like I said, a lot's going to change, but I don't think a quarterback's, worthy of a number one overall pick yet. And I think James Pierce is the best defensive player in this class. Because when you look back in the history of things, number one overall picks are either quarterback, edge rusher, offensive tackle, and that's about it. Maybe in today's NFL, a wide receiver can be a number one overall pick, but in this class, there's only really Luther Burden who could maybe take that spot. And like I said, I think James Pierce and a few other guys are a little bit better. Moving on, we got the Patriots taking Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. And that Michigan defensive line was just stacked last year with, guys that are going to the NFL like Chris Jenkins, and then you got Mason Graham. There's another guy in this class. I'm blanking on his name right now, but I'm pretty sure he'll end up in this mock draft. But Mason Graham is, I'm not going to say he's as good as a guy like Jalen Carter, just because I haven't studied Mason Graham fully yet. I want to make this known right now. I'm in the middle of studying this class. I've got running backs done, and I've got about half of the receivers done. That's it. Everything else is, base knowledge from what I've seen last season, just casually watching games. So I haven't studied a lot of these players, but, I know a little bit about each player. And Mason Graham, I've heard, could be the next Jalen Carter. Can get after the pass rusher, stop the run, an all-around really good defensive lineman. Number 4, we got Travis Hunter going to the Commanders, and it looks like here they got him listed as a receiver. I do like him more as a cornerback. I think he's just more of a playmaker at the cornerback position. I don't think he's going to be able to play both in the NFL. That's kind of ridiculous, but yeah, I would like him more as a cornerback. But here they got him at receiver. Him, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. I mean, they just drafted Luke McCaffrey pretty high in the draft last year. I don't know. I'd much rather see the Commanders take him and play him at cornerback. But there's also some really good cornerbacks in this class, like a Will Johnson. I think is a little bit better than Travis Hunter. And the cornerback out of Arizona is also a really good quarterback from what I've heard. Moving on, we got the Giants taking Shedeur Sanders. Yeah, as a Giants fan, especially if we're picking at number 5, we need a quarterback. And it sucks that this is the quarterback class we're going to be having to pick from. Again, a lot of things can change, but as of right now, I'm not in love with any of the quarterbacks. And, I like Shedeur Sanders. I think he's a pretty good field general. I think he'll be a good game manager. He takes care of the ball. But I'm not a fan of his leadership style. I don't want to have to deal with his dad. Deion Sanders is going to just be like an overshadowing parent, trying to control things. I don't want anything to do with that. But just strictly off the player, I do like Shedeur Sanders, and I think he can be a good player. It's just all the baggage that comes with him I'm a little bit, unsure of. Moving on to number 6, we got the Broncos taking Will Campbell. I've heard good things from what I've seen. Will Campbell's a really good offensive tackle. Some people I hear are wanting to push him into guard just because he's, a little bit more of a powerful guy, maybe lacks the athleticism, but I mean, from what I've seen, Will Campbell looks like a tackle, plays like a tackle, and he looks like a really good one. I am a little bit more of a fan of what's the tackle's name out of Texas? Kevin Banks Jr. I'm a little bit more of a fan of him from the little I've seen so far, but I still think Will Campbell's a really good offensive lineman. Moving on, we got Deone Walker going to the Cardinals. This guy's just a massive guy at 6'6", 348 pounds, but he's also got pass rush upside. It says right here, Walker's a freaky pass rusher at Dexter Lawrence type size. Yeah, that's early on. That's a good comp. I'm not going to say he's going to be as good as Dexter Lawrence, but he definitely has the play style of a guy like Dexter Lawrence coming out of Clemson. Moving on, we got the Vikings taking Benjamin Morrison. Again, another really good corner that slipped my mind. This is a very corner-heavy class, and I'm very excited about that. Last year we had, a deep wide receiver class, a deep quarterback class, and, that was about it. This year, from, the beginning of it, it's a really deep cornerback class, a really deep running back class, and, it's more of a defensive-heavy class as opposed to last year, which was an offensive-heavy class. So Benjamin Morrison, just a really good man-to-man corner from what I've seen, really sticky in coverage, and is a big play threat. Moving on, here we go. Luther Burden, the receiver out of Missouri, going to the Saints here at number 9. Luther Burden is, I know I said I was like halfway through the receivers. I'm saving Luther Burden till the end, but you can't help but see highlights and, things that Luther Burden has done, and he's extremely good. He's shifty. He can get open with ease. He's got the speed. I don't want to say a Tyreek Hill type of player, but he's got that type of, speed and quickness to him. I'm definitely not saying he's as fast as Tyreek Hill, but that type of player is what I see from what I've seen from highlights and stuff like that. I'm a really big fan of Luther Burden, and I can't wait to get his eval done. Moving on, Quinn Ewers goes to the Raiders. Yeah, Quinn Ewers, I wasn't a big fan of him coming from last year. I thought he was going to come out, in the 2024 draft class. He ended up going back to school, and I think he could take that next step up and, maybe, emerge as that QB1. I think it's between Quinn Ewers, Shadur Sanders, and Carson Beck as to who's going to be that QB1. And, Quinn Ewers has all the arm talent to do so. He's just got to, hone in on his accuracy and his decision making, and he should be good to go. Moving on, we got JT Tuimoloau. I think he's a little bit similar to Darius Robinson coming out from last year. A powerful guy. Maybe isn't the best at getting to the quarterback, but he shows that he can. It's just a little bit inconsistent. So I'm looking for JT Tuimoloau to have a more consistent 2024 season, and if he does, then he could definitely be a first-round pick, in my opinion. Moving on to Tetairoa McMillan, the receiver out of Arizona. And I just got done with his evaluation. I think he's a second-round player. I'm not, from what I've studied so far, not the biggest fan of this receiver class. I think that McMillan, struggles a little bit to create separation. I think he's got some of the best hands I've ever seen. Really, really good hands. I think he has like a 2.2% drop rate, which is amazing. But, I don't know. I didn't like how he separated, and I don't think he's much after the catch. And for being that big, I didn't think he was a great blocker. At least I don't think he tried to be a great blocker. So, really good talent. More of a second-round talent, in my opinion. Moving on, we got Emeka Egbuka, the receiver out of Ohio State. And Emeka Egbuka is a good receiver. He's just never really had the chance to be that guy at Ohio State. Playing with Marvin Harrison Jr., and then having like JSN. I'm pretty sure he was on the team with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, where they're he was always kind of like second fiddle to another really, really good wide receiver prospect. And this year, he has his chance to shine. He's more of a slot player, in my opinion. I think he can play on the outside, but either way, he's a productive guy, can get open, and he can create after the catch as well. Moving on, here we go. Kenneth Grant, that's the name, the Michigan defensive tackle. Again, Michigan had a bunch of good defensive linemen. Kenneth Grant is, just another guy who is, really good, high energy, I believe. And like I said, I haven't studied defensive tackles yet, but I've heard good things from Kenneth Grant. Moving on, we got Malachi Starks going to the Bears here at number 15. Yeah, pairing him up with, I assume, Jaquan Brisker. I really like Malachi Starks, but I believe he is a safety more so than a slot cornerback. So safeties aren't as valued as much. They usually don't go in the first round unless they're really good. And I do think Malachi Starks is really good. 15 though, it's a little rich in my opinion. Moving on here, yep, Kelvin Banks Jr., the Texas offensive tackle, and I think he's my OT1 so far. I really like Kelvin Banks. I think he's a good pass blocker and run blocker, a good mix of both, but, I'm excited to get my full eval done with him. Moving on, we got Nick Scourton going to the Browns, and, I really like Nick Scourton. He's a productive, big defensive lineman, and pairing him up alongside with Myles Garrett, I can't complain with that one. Here we go. Finally, Will Johnson going off the board. Everything I've seen, Will Johnson is going in like the top, at least top 10, sometimes top 5. So him falling to 18 to the Rams is a absolute steal in my opinion. I think Will Johnson is the best cornerback in this class. And I've done a little bit of, watching of Will Johnson just because I'm really intrigued by him. He's got all the coverage abilities you would want from him. The size is really good. Everything's really good about Will Johnson. I don't understand how he's fallen to 18. I think he's, him and Travis Hunter are probably, neck and neck for that cornerback 1 in my opinion. Moving on, we got Barrett Carter going to the Falcons. Linebackers aren't as valued as much in the NFL. I don't think Barrett Carter is good enough to warrant a top 20 selection, but I do think he's a really good, I don't even want to say undersized anymore. I think all linebackers are coming out at 6'1", 230, 240 pounds. So, just a small-ish athletic linebacker who's got sideline-to-sideline speed. I'm okay with it. Just linebackers in the first round. Not many go in the first round. Trey Harris, the receiver out of Ole Miss. He's actually the next receiver I'm going to be watching. I watched a little bit of him last year because, he may have come out in the 2024 draft class. I really like him. I don't want to speak too much on him until I fully watch him, but the Chargers need wide receiver help. They get Ladd McConkey last year. Trey Harris can be a good outside weapon to go alongside, hopefully, a Quentin Johnston if he improves next season. Moving on, just take Colston Loveland, getting, I would assume, Aaron Rodgers another weapon. That's if Aaron Rodgers doesn't retire, but, just getting him all the weapons you can is a really good idea. Colston Loveland was a pretty productive tight end in a run-heavy offense that also had Roman Wilson on the team. So if you're getting that much production from a tight end on a run-heavy team with a really good receiver on it, that probably means you're a really good tight end. Moving on, we got Harold Perkins, the linebacker out of LSU. Some people like to compare him to a Micah Parsons-esque type of player just because he is a linebacker, off-ball linebacker, but he can also get after the passer. The thing is, he's 6'1", 220. That's pretty small to be an edge rusher. I think he's more of a super athletic linebacker with, blitzing upside. And this is a linebacker I would be willing to take in the first round, not necessarily a Barrett Carter. Moving on, we got Tacario Davis, the cornerback out of Arizona. Just a super big, long, physical corner, 6'4", 195 pounds. That's extremely good size for a cornerback. And I think this would be a really good, pick for the Colts, who I'm pretty sure I've already picked. Yeah, I would have took Tacario Davis to the Colts because they love their athletic freaks at the cornerback position. But either way, I like Tacario Davis. Again, just another really good cornerback in this class. Jack Sawyer going to the Eagles here. Jack Sawyer had a lot of improving to do from last season, so I think he could end up being a first-round pick. And if any team's going to draft an edge rusher and make him a really good one, it's going to be the Eagles. I think Jack Sawyer just needs to work on his pass rush ability. I think he's a really good run defender, and he's an athletic freak, but isn't the most polished when it comes to rushing the passer, in my opinion. Moving on, we got the Cowboys taking Donovan Smith, the quarterback out of Houston. I'm not familiar with this guy really at all. He's 6'5", 240 pounds. That's pretty massive for a quarterback. Let's see what they got to say about him. There's always one surprise quarterback who catapults himself into the round 1 discussion. Smith is my pick right now at 6'5" and listed at 240 pounds. He looks the part. Plus, he has a mobility and a reasonable arm. I mean, yeah, he's right about there's always a quarterback that comes out of nowhere. Last year was Jaden Daniels. The year before that, I guess it was kind of a Will Levis. I mean, people knew about Will Levis, but he was getting, number 1 overall hype come draft day. So, There's always a quarterback that comes out of nowhere, and I mean, taking a shot on a guy, Donovan Smith, with those type of measurables, I'm not mad at it. Moving on to 26, we got the Texans taking Shmael Mondon, the linebacker out of Georgia. Again, like I said, not a fan of linebackers going in the first round. I did like Shmael Mondon last year, but I don't really like linebackers in the first round. So, I mean, he's a good football player. Second round pick, in my opinion. Michael Williams, the defensive lineman from Georgia. Him falling this far is pretty crazy because from what I've heard, he's an absolute monster. Again, I haven't really watched him. I'm pretty sure he broke out last year, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Really good player from what I've heard. Coming up next, we got Ashton Gillette, the defensive lineman out of Louisville. Another, really big defensive lineman. Let's see what he says. Given the age of Von Miller and Gregory Rousseau entering his fifth-year option season, the Bills added dynamic, thick edge rusher to the mix. So, yeah, he is an edge rusher. I wanted to make sure he wasn't an undersized defensive tackle. Don't know much about Ashton Gillette, but I assume he's good if he's going in the first round. Moving on, the Lions taking Princely Umanamielen, I think is how you say it, the edge rusher out of Ole Miss now. And I'm a big fan of Princely. I was really hyped on him coming out of last year's class. I was hoping he wasn't going to return, but he did return. I think he is definitely going to be a first-round pick, in my opinion. Big fan of Princely. Moving on, we got the Ravens taking Landon Jackson, the defensive tackle out of Arkansas. He's just a really big guy at 6'7", 281 pounds. Just a super powerful guy. You'd like him to be maybe a little bit more productive, but yeah, I think he could end up in the first round. Moving on to Nazir Stackhouse, the Georgia defensive lineman. I don't know if he's a first round type of player. I think he's more of a day 2 guy. I watched a lot of him last year because I thought he was going to come out in 2024. Ended up going back. But he's a run stuffer. Nothing crazy when it comes to pass rush upside, and drafting a defensive tackle in the first round, you want him to have that pass rush upside, and I just don't necessarily know if Nazir has that yet. And then ending things off, we got a running back. Like I said, it was a really deep running back class. They got the 49ers taking Quinshon Judkins. I think there's a couple more running backs that I would have above him, like Amarian Hampton out of North Carolina. Ollie Gordon had a really big season last year from Oklahoma State. And I'm also a bigger fan of his teammate now, Trevion Henderson. I know he struggled with injuries, but when he's healthy, he's a really good running back. So it's going to be exciting to see that running back tandem at Ohio State with Quinshon Judkins and Trevion Henderson, 2 top 5 running backs in this class, in my opinion. But yeah, that's going to do it. Let me know what you guys think of this mock draft. Like I said, it's just to get familiarized with the players, but I think it was a pretty interesting mock draft. So with that being said, I'm the Draft Nerd. Thanks for watching.